Welcome everyone. My name is Ben Kent. So I'm a director here at Meridian West, and as many of you probably know, we regularly do these webinars where we take kind of hot topics that are kind of impacting professional services, particularly some marketing and BD teams. And this session is really focusing on AI. Absolutely, kind of all the hot topics, this is probably the hottest. And what I'm interested in, and we're going to be debating, is kind of what are the practical implications of AI? How can we actually use it? Because there's been a lot of hype about this topic, but I think kind of the user cases are particularly interesting and how to get real value out of it. So to do that, we got three experts. I'm just going to introduce them. We got Illitch Real, who is the founder of a technology AI consultancy firm called Rubik Lab, and specializing in doing advanced analytics, particularly in the kind of research space. And we've had the pleasure of using his services, been really great actually working with him on both our thought leadership and hopefully on our client feedback. From the home team, we've got John Mulligan, who is one of our sort of data experts. He's an associate director here, has a real good understanding of statistics, and he's got an MSc in social research methods and statistics. He's been working with a wide variety of clients from the Institute and Faculty of Actuaries, LCP, Bird & Bird, and DACB. And last but not least, we have Paul Brabant, who is a partner at Alix Partners, and he leads the e-discovery and digital investigations team. And in this role, Paul implements technology processes, including AI, to assess personal and corporate data that will serve as legal evidence in disputes and investigations. So we definitely got the experts here, and I think what's interesting is kind of bring kind of diverse perspectives on it. So my first question is for you, Paul, because I think, with the advent of GPT, it's suddenly like, oh, AI is new, but you've been using AI for many years, and I'd be interested in how it's kind of transformed your work around e-discovery and investigations. Can you just give me a sort of snapshot of its impact it's had?
Yeah, sure. Good afternoon, everyone. So it's interesting because it's been around for a really long time and evolved rather slowly. So I'll just a quick evolution, the background as well. Then we'll end up seeing what the impact is. Initially, it was called analytics because ultimately you had information and a person had to make the decision. And I think the big shift happened when the software could deliver an answer. And that was a subset of AI that is known as supervised machine learning. So a person shows the software. This is a good example of a bad example. The software learns and can apply that at scale. So my world, in the legal world, it meant document review, massive documents, right? And it really created a strong business need because you had law firm associates billing 300 an hour, sometimes more, reviewing documents for weeks, months, at the cost of millions in very large cases, right? So software developers thought this is a great problem to try to tackle, and develop software that could do just that, right? Use one of those lawyers as an expert, to supervise the training of the software that could apply to millions of documents and tell you which are the most likely relevant ones from those that are not. So there's a really strong distinction with what happened there and ChatGPT, for example, and been like thrown out there for people to use, whereas people try to break into the legal world with this technology. The start was very slow. I was first pitched this in 2008, roughly. Company that we can solve a lot of these problems. So at the time, I was a tech provider. I was very excited. Came to see clients. And the lack of excitement was shocking. The exact opposite of what you have today.
Yeah.
The reason is skepticism. What if it makes errors? How are we going to deal with that in the case? Where things, the stakes are high, but probably an amount of vested interest also, right? We've got a great business here. We'll sabotage it. And the breakthrough came in like 2000 to 2015. Sorry, 2010 to 2015, when some ambitious lawyers actually said, you know what? We have more to gain than to lose. So let's go to a judge and explain how this works. And once a court decision said this works, which had been true for a long time, and it just developed and became the same kind of, everybody wanted in, as we see now with Gen AI. So, so the impact has been going from just a minor aid to literally supplanting the role of a doc reviewer. But doc reviewers exist today. It's a business thing. It's just that they're working with the AI. You still need a reviewer to make the initial decision and train the software.
Yeah.
So I hope that helps as a basic background. One thing I'll add is that the what we see with Gen AI is it's so much more accessible. It's pre-trained. In our industry, we still have to do the training on each new case, and there's no interface. You just talk.
Yeah.
Although I think Illitch, you had some thoughts about the interface aspect, which were quite interesting. But
yeah.
So that makes it transformative but slow. And I wonder if a lesson about what I've experienced with AI could mean that after all the hubbub and hoopla of current Gen AI, then the realities of implementation challenges will slow it down a bit. It'll be transformative, maybe not as radically as some people think.
So interesting. So in many ways, it's already transformed your service line, but you feel like, so after this sort of hoopla, it's kind of the nitty gritty of how you get the best use out of it, what the risks are, how do you manage that? So Illitch, I think that's where we're interested, is because because as the marketing and BD teams, how do we practically get the most out of GPT? It'd be interesting how you've been using it and how techniques you use.
So I think there is a big distinction between understanding the way to connect with those with those LLMs, and then the way you implement this into your working environment. In a way, when I look at how people initially understand or communicate about with LLMs, so almost look at it as if it's some sort of a substitute for Googling for some information. And I think a better analogy is to try to understand that there is like a learning curve as to almost the art of knowing how to ask a good question, and how to conceptualize very clearly what you want, what the initial goal when starting an interaction, how to express it as clearly as possible so that you give the best potential for the LLM to understand your prompt and to deliver. And this can be done for very all sort of matters. And in this sense, ChatGPT was a great way to have something with a very basic but easy interface that everybody, if they had the appetite, could go and try. However, when you are within a work environment, we don't recommend and we don't use ChatGPT into the workflows that we integrate for our clients and even for different internal tasks. There are multiple reasons for that. One big limitation is right now, ChatGPT is very good at hallucinating and lying. Very convincing liar. Pushed it to an art form kind of level, and it's almost impossible to spot it in most cases.
So there's no way of stopping it lying. You can't tell it not to lie.
Yeah, you need to double check everything. I mean, you can argue that when depending of the context you're in, this can happen with people as well. But it is really a problem. I was listening recently to an interview of Sam Altman from OpenAI, who said that the hallucination problem, he was expecting it to be solved within the next 18 months. But right now, within a business context, that's a total no-go. You cannot have something that will sometimes lie. It's just a no-go.
Yeah.
So our approach is that we put we use LLMs programmatically. So we have more parameters and settings that we can work with, and we put ChatGPT in a cage, if you want, so that it will only work with the data that we feed it. and we also validate it with other program in the background so that there's no risk for hallucination. And one last point, also one key aspect when you work with data is that you need to be able to get the same result when you ask the same question. And that's something that by definition you cannot do with ChatGPT, because every answer will be somewhat similar but always different. And that's a problem.
Got you. So you're making this distinction between using the public GPT, but then putting it in a cage
Yes.
and then using,
Yes.
And tell me kind of how you're using it, because we're in the sort of client insight kind of game. How are we using, what are the kind of user cases? How do you sort of see this transforming client insight going forward?
So, pardon me. So one, in my specific niche in the industry, a few years back, everything was about big data. And now when you go to conferences, you hardly ever hear the idea of big data. Everything is about AI. But in a way, I think big data is more relevant than ever, because with AI, we can better target the kind of data that we want to integrate into our data mixes. Not just by pointing at specific direction, but by really defining, not by keywords, but by more developed language-based type of business questions, if you want. We can identify the type of content/data that we want to integrate into our mixes. And this is really, this allows us to get volume with relevancy into our mix. And that's a big difference and a big opportunity.
And yeah, because so what that means is rather than looking at lots of data tables or doing pivot tables, you can all just ask a question. What is this data telling you about exits you? Is that what?
So you need to look at it first at the way you target the data that you want to bring in. So that's step number one. And then for the analysis, it's a mix of traditional statistical type of methodology that you can bring in. We've also been able to actually talk to your data and question your data, and we developed this type of language-based interfaces where this can actually take place. But just to go back to what Paul was saying earlier, we still need to have within our clients team or within the team people with a strong understanding of the subject matter, because again, it's all about the clarity of what you want and the clarity of the questions that you're asking, and it remains a tool rather than just a solution. And it's more like a dance, if you want, between you having your business questions and being able to convey those to the systems, and then work with the LLMs to be and the other tools at your disposal to be able to make these answers relevant and retarget it to the problem you had.
So I think the implication of that is that domain knowledge is actually essential to kind of check. And Paul, is that what you've found? I'm just interested in how this is going to transform, in terms of the talent pool within professional services firms. What are the new jobs and what are the jobs that may disappear?
Yeah, I think it empowers one or fewer people to be extra effective. But by just extending the capabilities over scale or complexity or whatever it may be. One thing that would be a potential application that I would find quite helpful in marketing. So when I reach out to a customer, I have analytics that I can use. So that's at the start when I mentioned these tools, but I need to get the answer. I scour through this and it tells me this person knows that person, but I don't know how rich the connection is, etc. And I need to dig through several different systems to find out what's the context I need to reach out properly. Right? And I think that could be packaged quite nicely by Gen AI, by just processing all that complexity and presenting it in a way that I can say, what are Ben's recent, what is the news about Ben and his involvement in this business that I should know?
Yeah. So it's a kind of like CRM on steroids.
Yeah, exactly. By bringing multiple data sources all together and giving an answer in English that I can feed and educate myself on.
Yeah, quite transformational. And John, you've been in statistics using forms of data analytics for a long time. What's your view on this? How do you think this is going to transform the sector, and particularly on client insight? Because it's something we've been embracing at Meridian West.
Absolutely. I mean, to echo what Paul and Illitch said, I think I kind of first got exposed to some of this technology sort of 10-15 years ago when I was studying statistics, early forms of neural networks, and then in previous firms where we started exploring text analysis, trying to do using natural language processing techniques and that was in a social housing association, and we were using that to try and filter incoming messages, try and find alerts, early warnings that we could feed into CRM. And it started off quite slowly, single word, kind of advanced word search. And I think this progression that we're seeing of ever advanced sophistication is just going to continue. I'm particularly excited at the prospect over the next few years of how it could really empower us in terms of processing the unstructured data that we all deal with. I mean, we had a business breakfast a few weeks ago, didn't we, when we talked around client listening and the challenges, and it really struck me a lot of the challenges that we heard from people in the room were about all of the anecdotal feedback, the unstructured feedback, the qualitative feedback. I think that's a really an AI, this generative ChatGPT style models will be really effective at kind of breaking down what all of that content is, finding connections that maybe would be hard to find for a human, just given the vast quantity of text and data. However, we all still need people in the room to interpret it. We'll still need humans to interact with what that models are identifying, because these models are only as good as the data that it's fed. It can't really replicate all of our human experience that we've all had over the decades, the number of meetings that we've all sat in, the conversations we've all had, understanding the wider business context. It still needs people to interpret what these models are saying.
So it sounds like kind of putting your data in the cage, making sure you've got good data going in at one end, and then someone to interpret it at the other. So it's not like just panacea, it just does it all for you. And Illitch, we've been working together on how you bring together kind of client insight and information which is in kind of the public domain, kind of company reports. And I think it'd be interesting to see. I was quite really excited in what we could do about that. I think you tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So again, it starts by identifying the business problem in collaboration with your clients, and then have almost like a two-way approach as to where you can get the data that you want to bring into your data mix, like a more guided, obvious approach, which is going to replicate what has worked well in the past, but which was more manual and transactional. So we can do it quicker, with more volume and probably more precision as well. And quantity matters, really. So that's one aspect. And then the other aspect is, even though once you select your data set, you put it in the cage, but and that's looking ahead a little bit, but we're already experimenting with this. There's a lot of automation in a data pipeline that can be done, so that the monitoring of business climate or business opportunities in different sectors can be continuous, instead of ad hoc, really, and to look at the work we do with data almost on an ongoing trending basis, which you can only do when you have volume and speed of processing and accuracy of targeting. So all of this is really coming together, and that's where the big opportunity is for the work that we do for our clients and for the type of work we've been doing together. Because once you can apply this principle across different sectors, and you can also really bring in so it's not just the external data. You can also, to John's point, you can also bring in some of the legacy data from your clients into this ecosystem if you want. We are in all organizations, we are all sitting on piles of data, sometimes structured, sometimes unstructured. Sometimes you wonder if the structured one is better than the unstructured one, because it's a lot of it has been moved around with this data. But now with the greater efficiency of all those LLMs, we can really go for volume, and it's the precision. It's also the cost associated to it. The cost keeps going down and down for training, as Paul was saying earlier, but also for pure processing. So if the speed goes time 10, 10x or 100x, and the accuracy keeps increasing like it's been increasing, especially, it's been a long time coming, but in the last 18 months, like the rate of improvement is such that if you look at the trajectory, and I'm kind of anticipating the next question, but you can see where this is going to bring us.
Yes.
Not even in 5 or 10 years, but like just around the corner. There's a lot of new opportunities are going to be created for sure.
So it sounds like, from a intelligence, client intelligence is transformational, integrating lots of different sources, doing it in real time, looking across CRM data, who knows who, what the business is up to.
Yes.
But then sort of flipping the other aspect of also GPT is kind of content generation and kind of creating thought leadership, and the prospect potentially of kind of highly personalized content for clients. Any views on that? Anyone? And how this could be used for content generation?
Yeah, I can go. The big change with especially GPT-4, I mean, there's some other models catching up quickly, is the quality of the language has really improved drastically, even compared from in the last 6 months compared to, or 8 months compared with 3.5. It's not a bit better, it's really much better. It was kind of clunky and a bit vanilla, for lack of a better word, not so long ago. But now with advanced type of prompting and formatting, we can really get reports that are indistinguishable from a report from the source example report that we feed in. It's becoming literally that good. It takes work. It's not at the click of a button, but it is already there.
Yeah, and I've heard stories of people taking kind of rather dry, fairly academic articles written by lawyers and then getting ChatGPT to rewrite them. Paul, what's your view on content generation?
For me, the task of knowledge management has been one that professional services firms are trying to do forever, and managing, but the problem's always been people not submitting content and the content not be properly categorized or tagged, right? So it comes up when you do a search, and then people gave up on them. Whereas here, I can really envision a framework where the AI, you're just asking a question, it's telling you should meet these 3 people. They're key in this, and I don't see them in your contact list, or here's the content, right? Globally in any language that you should read, served up, translated in English, and so on. So that expansion of, again, that concept of one person able to do more, so that all extra input that's curated.
So you could say, I'm meeting Paul tomorrow. Provide me some content in our bank of information over here that I could serve up to Paul. Is that the idea?
That's part of it, but even beyond that, for example, you've all seen your Microsoft systems, but smarter. They'll tell you have a clash of meetings coming up. What do you want to do about it? Or you have no focus time. You're booked back to back. Would you like me to schedule some focus time for you? This sort of thing, but with knowledge that matters with the organization and outside of the organization, brought together, that's relevant to you. So I agree with what you were saying earlier.
Perfect. It'd be good, we've got quite a few people on the call. If anyone's got any good user cases, please either put them in the chat or and then we can sort of share those, or but I was just going to sort of I think I was sort of going to look forward now and say, okay, if we're going to look at the next 5 years or maybe even 10 years, what's your predictions for the kind of breakthrough applications for professional firms? John, do you want to go
I think
first?
10 years a bit too hard a question given the speed of movement. I think there's two threads for me around AI. There's the kind of digital assistant. You know, we've all seen how Siri and all of those and Cortana broke down, just didn't work. But I think AI could be that digital assistant in your pocket very easily. If you just look at what Microsoft are doing with their Copilot, and it's really quite exciting, and how that will be baked into all of their product suite. So there's that kind of digital assistant thing. But I think the really breakthrough thing that would, for me, would be where you start getting into the position where these AIs can start helping lift the cognitive load, the mental load, the kind of really hard thinking that we have to do as humans. And I think that would be really exciting. Whether or not we'll hit it in 5 years, I don't know. I know that OpenAI stated, who run ChatGPT, their stated aim is to kind of progress towards that more concepts of a general AI, a sentient AI. I don't think we'll get there in 5 years, but that I think would be quite exciting.
But John, are we going to have like kind of baked in AI, which is part of your Microsoft Outlook, and then what AI that then is for particular tasks? So, you know, content generation, research.
So. Absolutely. So, I mean, it's already there. I mean, the Copilot stuff is already out there. It's on GitHub. Microsoft are testing it with some of their big clients. That's not going to be that far away where you'll be able to use a chat, and it'll just become like a feature set within your software, where you interact with your software with chat or even maybe voice. We're already using it in our Qualtrics platform, and that to kind of take some of the load off the coding of all our verbatim responses that come in on our survey. And that kind of type of digital assistant AI is there, and it will just get more powerful.
Brilliant. Illitch, your predictions next 5 years?
So it's all about personalization and specialization, really. Because again, because of the cost decrease and the speed in efficiency, you can really go back and I was listening to Mark Zuckerberg recently, who was explaining that this is the way this has to be. So first with smaller businesses, like to be able to get all the information about their business, their environments, and then to scale it up for larger firms. Very specialized, but also very personalized type of AI. You know, with the team, we're always experimenting. You can have different AIs validating each other, for example, with different type of attributes and personality. So you can have very critical AI. You can have like the idea generation type of AI.
Interesting.
And this really goes back to some of the psychological type of fundamentals, if you want, like the different traits of openness, or and you can just cross these through an AI type of validation. This sounds like it's not a big deal, but it really makes a difference, actually. Having different perspective within an AI environment, so you can very quickly see that you could have almost like a team of agents with very specific profiles and domain expertise that would try to pitch and validate each other's idea and come with and help you in this cognitive type of network, really. And
so you're not going to solve team management. You're going to replace your team with different AIs.
I actually saw someone who was within their Slack team had integrating different AI persona, and for a specific task, when kicking off a project, it would bring because it would start doing some of the easier tasks with the AI in. But by the way, there is this Claude from Anthropic, which is accessible for free on Slack, and it's pretty damn good. Same for I invite everyone to go in and play with it, because it's also a nice interface and a nice way to connect with it.
Perfect. And finally, you, Paul, your predictions.
Yeah, I agree completely about the personal assistant. I think that when you think about the Tony Stark Jarvis interaction, that doesn't seem that far-fetched suddenly, right? But beyond that, what scares me and excites me at the same time is the notion of two of those GPTs connecting to resolve a problem. So, for example, RFP situation, or right, let them talk. They're talking to each other, and then what's scary is, well, what do they come up with? But it's something that I feel is inevitable at some point. Right?
Perfect. Well, we hit the half hour. I think it's a really fascinating discussion. Thanks, guys. I think some good practical insights there. But I think we're just at the beginning of this journey. So I just want to thank you, everyone, and I thank all the participants for joining us. And look out for more webinars and more breakfasts from Meridian West. Thank you.